After the protocol has been developed, the next part is to search the literature for the relevant studies. So they'll use the databases that were mentioned in the protocol and the keywords to locate any studies. And then what they're going to do is to make sure that no stone is left unturned. So they'll do things like looking at the references within the studies they located to see if there are papers they didn't find. They will go to look at clinical trials to see if there are any registered clinical trials that resulted in papers they didn't find. And they'll talk with subject matter experts. Once they've located all of the papers, they need to screen them to determine whether they meet the inclusion criteria. Typically, this is done by 2 research team members who work independently from one another to determine whether a study should be included or excluded. Most often, they agree on their assessments because the criteria have already been predetermined, but sometimes they have a few papers that they'll disagree on. This is usually resolved in one of 2 ways, and it's always outlined in the protocol as to how they'll resolve these disagreements. The first way they might resolve the disagreements is the 2 people will meet to talk about why each person felt the way they did and see if they can come to an agreement as to whether to include or exclude that paper. The alternative way that this is typically done is a 3rd research team member will get those papers and review them and make a conclusion. And then whichever conclusion has the majority, 2 of 3 votes, is whether that paper will be included or not. Now, what's important to understand about this process is that usually what you're going to see is a huge number of papers are located, and then only a very small number end up being included after the screening process. There's nothing fishy going on here. This is a natural part of the process because you want to make sure that the papers that are being included are actually very relevant and answering the question at hand. And there are also some more technical reasons why papers may be excluded. Maybe the authors determined that they were only going to use papers that are written in English. So if a study is in German, for example, that might be an exclusionary reason. Sometimes they'll find abstracts. Often research meetings will publish the abstracts and then they are in the published literature. But when they go and they get the abstract, they find that that study was never published in a full scientific paper that describes all of the different parts of the scientific study. So they may check with the abstract authors to see if this study ended up being published or to get an update. But often if you find an abstract, that would be another reason it's excluded. So stay tuned in the next video to find out about the next part of this process once the papers have been found and screened. Thanks for listening today.